again to Navajo County Connection. I'm David Tenney, member of the Navajo County Board of Supervisors representing District 4, and my co-host.
Hello, I'm Dawnafe Whitesinger representing District 5. It's good to be here with you today.
Nice to see you again, Dawnafe.
Good to see you.
Seems like every week we come and record one of these. I know it's not quite that often, it just seems like it though,
Yeah,
right?
blink of an eye.
Yeah. All right, well today we have a guest that, not his first time on the program, but it's usually not real easy to get him here. But because we wanted to talk about county budgeting and kind of the budget process and how things are going with the county financially, we thought it would be a good time to bring our county manager on. So we want to welcome Jayne, our county manager. Jimmy, glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Ms. Whitesinger invited me this time, so I was glad to come.
Yeah, okay, well, so now we've both worn out one welcome with him.
I can get him the next day,
yeah.
No problem.
Well, Jimmy, before we get started talking about county finances and things of that nature, can you take just a minute, kind of remind the folks that are viewing at home who you are, where you're from, what kind of brought you to this point in your career, how long you've been in Navajo County, and a little bit about your family and all that.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to be here. My wife and I are from Gilbert. We both grew up there, went to high school there, and I went off to college, went to NAU, and I have a master's in public administration from ASU. But we moved to the mountain in '99. I've been with the county almost 11 years as the county manager. Really a dream for me was to go back to school and get my MPA and to come here and to work with and work for the people of Navajo County. My wife and I have 4 children. The oldest one's in college. Youngest one will be a 7th grader at Sholo Junior High this coming school year.
Wow.
And I have a freshman and a junior or senior as well. So.
And I have big plans for the freshmen on the freshman football team this year.
Oh, that's right. Go Cougars.
Yes,
Yellow
exactly
Jackets.
Right. She had it right.
You had it right the first time. No, but we're blessed to live. We live here in Sholo, and we love being here and doing having the opportunity to work in public service at the county.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the reminding people who you are and where you're from, and thank you for what you do for the county. It's been a privilege for me, and I'll allow Dawnafe to speak for herself. I'm sure it has been for her as well, to work with you. And I'm excited to let the people know a little bit today about what it is that we as a board do and you and your staff do to try to take care of the taxpayer dollar and make sure we're stretching it as far as we can. So anyway, thanks for being here today.
Yes, we're happy to have you. And, you know, along the same lines in a sense, but I've been able to work with you in the past year and know that you're a great steward of our community and keeping us very conscientious about how to better serve our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the public may or may not know that the main responsibility that Dawnafe and I, as well as the rest of the board, have as members of the Board of Supervisors is to watch over every taxpayer dollar that comes in to the county and how is it spent by not only by the board, but by the other elected officials. And so we oversee even though we don't tell the sheriff how to run his department, we have to oversee his budget, and we have to approve his budget. And same thing with the county attorney and all the other elected officials. And we have to make sure that the road yards are run correctly and that those dollars are maximized and right on down the line. So every tax dollar that is collected in Navajo County, for the county at least, not those that are collected for schools and whatnot, they have their own boards, but for the county, we have the responsibility to make sure those are spent in a proper and an appropriate way. And I know that we take that seriously. And so anytime we're in the budget cycle that we're in right now, and actually it's kind of awkward to talk about being in the budget cycle because I don't know if you're ever out of it.
This is true.
But anyway, so can we talk just a little bit about the budget process, kind of when it starts, when it ends, and kind of walk us through the steps of what you and James Menlove, your finance director, who we've had on the show before, what it is you're looking at budget time. And then once we talk about that for a couple minutes, then we'll actually talk about the budget that we're looking at for this, to approve within the next month or so, and what it means to the citizens and what some of the challenges are that we've been trying to work through and fight through.
Right. Well, Ms. Tenney and Ms. Whitesinger, in Arizona, there's 15 counties, and under Arizona law, those boards of supervisors are allowed to hire a county manager. And so you have 15 county managers or administrators in Arizona. And you all hire an administrator or a manager to on your behalf, kind of help manage the daily operations of the organization. But again, as Mr. Tenney, you mentioned earlier, in working in partnership with our elected officials and our department directors and our team. You know, in Navajo County, we have about a 600-member team, and we use the word team because we mean the word team, that we're here to serve and we exist to serve the public and the public interest of Navajo County. And you as a board, you take that very seriously, and you expect us to take that seriously. Mr. Tenney, you mentioned that the budgeting process is really a 12-month process, and at a staff level, that's really how we treat this. That it's a 12-month conversation, that yes, there are points in time in June and July where there's a tentative and a final adoption, a budget presentation in May to the board typically. But it's a 12-month conversation. It's a 12-month accountability process where we watch dollars every day, every week, but with a monthly accounting of where dollars are going and how they're being spent. And then, as you all know, that's reported to the board every month as well by the finance director of here's where we're at, here's where we projected to be in revenues and expenditures. But Mr. Tenney and Ms. Whitesinger, you mentioned earlier about accountability. You know, I think that's demonstrated by the State Auditor General coming to the last Board of Supervisors meeting to share about Navajo County's budgeting and audit and accounting principles and process, that we do it well. And I think she even used the term that Navajo County is a model county.
Yes.
Of how the Board of Supervisors, our elected officials, and our department directors and our staff are accountable and responsible for the taxpayer dollar.
Well, and that was good news, and it's been good news to hear from the Auditor General's office. That hasn't always been the case at Navajo County. When I got on the board 10 years ago, we were, I shouldn't say we, I guess it was we. As soon as I became a member of the team, it was we, and I know it wasn't this way when, I mean, it was that way when you came to work for Navajo County, just less than a year before I got there. When you got there, they were what, 5 or 6 years behind on audits, and as was mentioned by the Auditor General, unauditable. And now, with under your direction and with James Menlove, the finance director, that's not the case anymore. What's the current status with the audits?
Well, again, Mr. Tenney and Ms. Whitesinger, under the leadership and the guidance of the board and the support of the board, and again with kind of the expertise of Mr. Menlove, our finance director, and a whole team of people and departments working together as a team, we are completely caught up on all audits. We have very few findings today. Our audit and our financial procedure is very clean and current. And again, that's what you as a board expect of us, and that's what the citizens and the taxpayers of Navajo County expect.
It's something that's very
us.
important. As fiduciary stewards of our community and taxpayer dollars, it's important to have those clear audits and for us to know that we're in good standing and that we've made every concerted effort to be transparent and be accountable to our taxpayers.
Yeah, it's good news when we heard from Debbie Davenport, the Auditor
right. General,
to let us know that we got clean audits, we're current, and that she has an absolute great working relationship with James and his staff, and things are moving forward. Now, before we transition into, and I know you got some slides you want to share for 15 minutes or so to talk to the folks about the budget, we talk a little bit about what some of the outside influences are? We deal with our issues here at Navajo County, but certainly we don't make the rules. We are an arm of the state. Mm-hmm. And we're reminded quite often at the legislature that they're the parent, we're the child, and so they tell us what we have to do, and we have to then go enact the laws that they set. And sometimes they do things that don't help us financially, as well as the federal government quite often does things that don't help us financially. Can we talk about how the dynamic you have with trying to balance what we're trying to do at the county with what comes down from the state and the federal government?
Unlike cities and towns that are truly statutorily separate entities created on their own and have their own charters, the 15 counties in Arizona are truly subdivisions of the state. When the first counties were created pre-statehood in territorial days in the 1860s, the first 4 counties in Arizona were created. And they were created to deliver state services at a more local level. So you didn't have to go to Phoenix to the territorial capital or wherever the territorial capital was at the time. You didn't have to go there to get a marriage license or to conduct business with the state. And that's how counties were created. So we still exist to deliver state services on behalf of the state. The discussion today is how much do the taxpayers of Navajo County have to pay for that state service versus how much is a it's a state service, so how much is the state continuing to pass on to the taxpayers of Navajo County and expecting them to absorb the cost of state health care, state probation, state court system, et cetera. And that's one of the biggest challenges that Navajo County has had back to FY08. And again, the counties in Arizona run on a state fiscal year. So when you say FY08, it's 07-08 it's July 1 of 07 to June 30 of 08. And that was kind of the high year for the state and for the county. And from there we've had the challenge. But coupled with our challenged economy locally and loss of paper mill and the other challenges we've had here that have had large impact on our cities, towns, our communities, our businesses, and the county. But the state passing almost $3.2 million in general fund expenditures to the county since FY08 has compounded the problem for us.
Yeah, the state says they balance their budget, and I guess maybe they do, but a lot of it is done by passing expenses onto the counties and saying, here, now you pay for this that we have traditionally paid for. That's been a challenge. And now we also have a large chunk of our general fund budget which comes to us from the federal government each year, because we have such a large amount of federal lands, the national forest and whatnot, there's no property tax that you can put on that, yet we have to offer services. The sheriff has to be there in search and rescue and other things that you have to do in these general forests. And so there's a program from the federal government called PILT, Payment in Lieu of Taxes, where because we can't tax that land, the federal government pays us because we have to give the services on there. And now that's not going to be included in this upcoming budget because the federal government is kind of at a standstill. Imagine that. And they're not sure whether they're going to reauthorize it or reappropriate that, so we can't build that into our budget, which is almost $1.5 million to our county. So that's something you get to deal with as you go through the budget as well.
Right.
It has complicated things. They did fund the current fiscal year in the Farm Bill for 1 year, but there's no current congressional authorization or funding for the payment in lieu of taxes. Again, as Mr. Tenney mentioned, that's an acknowledgement of the large federal forest and BLM presence in our county and counties across the West. It's a huge issue. But when you take $1.4 million out of our general fund revenue, on top of about $1 million that we've lost in federal and state contracts in the sheriff's adult detention facility, which was revenue that helped pay for bodies for detention officers, coupled with state impacts, coupled with a down economy, we've had some challenges, and we continue to. But as an organization, we're pushing through this. But Mr. Tenney, I can share with you a couple assumptions we've had going into our budget.
Yeah, let's do this. We've got about 12 minutes to go through what is normally about a 30-minute presentation.
Okay.
So go ahead. Let's talk about the budgeting process and what you've been working on and what we're facing, what it's going to look like this year.
We'll get through this.
Okay.
Again, with the challenges that we've talked about, we've been working with departments since January, a 12-month process, but deliberately since January, with budget instructions to departments and working with them that they are to have flat operating budgets. Mm-hmm. And the only exception that we are putting as a staff into recommended budget to the Board of Supervisors is a 2% salary adjustment for all employees in the organization. Employees have not had an adjustment since FY08. So today they're taking home less dollars in real terms than they were taking home in FY08 because of employee-related expenses. But in the revenue assumptions, we're projecting an additional $532,000 by the county levying our available property tax levy. Those would be new dollars that help offset some of the losses we've had. We're projecting a 3% increase in state shared revenue. Counties in Arizona get a portion of the state sales tax. We're projecting a 3% growth next fiscal year over this fiscal year in county half-cent sales tax. Most cities and towns, for example, have a 2-cent sales tax. Counties have a half-cent on non-food items, because we also can only tax the state tax code, which the state does not tax food, so neither do counties. We are projecting to use about $1.5 million in legislative authorized special district cash transfers, again, as a mechanism to help us and a tool in our toolbox to help us balance a budget given the challenges we've had, namely with the $1.4 million loss of payment in lieu of taxes from not authorized by the federal government. And we are projecting also an additional $320,000 in additional 3-cent levy for library and the health district to help fund the transfer that the legislature again has authorized. Currently, we are the lowest paid law enforcement jurisdiction in Navajo County. And so we have worked with the sheriff to recommend to the board a salary reclassification for sworn law enforcement so we can become competitive and we can keep our talent and not continue to be a training ground for other jurisdictions, which is very expensive.
That's been a frustration for the entire 10 years I've been on the board, that we find a cadet, send them to the academy, get them trained, get them on staff for a year or two, and just when they're ready to roll, along comes another police department in another town somewhere and offers them 10 grand more than we can pay them, and off they go, and we start again training a new one. So we've definitely got to do something to keep them around, in my opinion.
And that training is expensive. When you're talking about a $30,000 spend for the training of a deputy, and then also the risk that goes with new law enforcement on the they're all professionals, but we need to do something. So this is what we're recommending to the board. The 2% adjustment with employee-related expenses is about a $448,000 investment in our employees. And then I mentioned almost about $888,000 loss of our DOC, Department of Correction, and our U.S. Marshal contracts, where we would house Department of Correction inmates and U.S. Marshal inmates in a jail, and those jurisdictions paid us to house them. That paid for about 17 positions that are now having to go back into the general fund because we still have to staff the facility.
Right.
Just from a 30,000 foot level, back in our high year of 08, 09 timeframe, we had about 33 million in general fund revenue. This current year we're projecting about 31.5. The coming fiscal year, a little less than that. Again, the factors largely associated with some revenue growth, but the loss of our payment in lieu of taxes and the loss of the inmate contracts. That's just a bar chart that shows you the same thing. In the general fund, basically our general fund spend is on people, as in most organizations. So 67% of the general fund dollar that is spent in Navajo County is on people that are directly delivering services throughout the county in various capacities. We have some other expenses, including 10% of our general fund budget going to state mandated health care, a state health care program that we have to pay for. We have some community partnership and some other court and general fund related expenses, but most of our spend goes to people. Again, an outline of our factors: Marshal contract, our Department of Corrections contract, loss of PILT. Total, this coming year, the state impacts is about 303,000, but cumulatively back to 08, it's almost 3.2 million. So that's on top of, again, the other factors that we've talked about that the county's had to absorb and the board and our team has had to deal with. For 30 months, our employees took a 2.5% pay decrease. That was restored, but there was no increase. They have not had an increase since 08. From looking back to FY08, the last increase that was given to employees to the current fiscal year, our employees' take-home pay has actually decreased from 3.6 to 14.8%, depending on the retirement system they're in or the health plan they're on. And our ERE expenses, our employee-related expenses, have gone up 11% since FY08. And we have had 3 reductions of force since 08. So we have 75 vacant positions that were not vacant in 08. So as an organization, we've tried to be we have been very responsible, I believe. The board and the organization have been responsible in cutting and reducing our workforce. When you look at employee compensation, if you look at the bottom blue box, the bottom line is for a $30,000 a year employee, depending on one of the 4 retirement systems, state retirement systems they're in, they are taking home, the bottom or the right column with the red is the net percent decrease in what employees are taking home in FY14 than they were taking home in 08. So even if the board were to approve, and assuming you all approve, the 2% increase for employees on July 1st, they'll still be taking home less than they were taking home in 08.
So some employees have been here since that time, are taking home, have not had a raise in that 6 years, and are taking home about 14% less than they were because of increases in contributions to retirement and increases in health care costs.
Correct.
But the federal government was going to fix the health care issue, right?
Go
ahead.
There's been a lot of challenges.
Discussion for another day.
Yes.
In the general fund motor fleet, again, vehicles that are simply used for employees to do their jobs and to provide service to citizens. In our general fund fleet, our average vehicle is 10 years old. 49 of our 124 vehicles in the general fund fleet are over 10 years old. We're working with departments to just meet bare necessity, but we truly need to replace 18 vehicles in the general fund fleet. Some of them, actually many of them in the sheriff's office. And you saw some information from the sheriff recently.
Yeah, at our last meeting where he showed vehicles that his deputies are driving with over 200,000 miles on them.
Like the real speedometer, they're really driving those vehicles every day.
And I think there was one that was from '89 or something to that effect.
Yeah.
We have some challenges,
Yes.
and we truly need to make some capital investment. Our community partnerships, Navajo County believes strongly in community partnerships because it serves the public interest. Unfortunately, because of the budget challenges, we've had to reduce the expenditure in our community partnership by about 50% since FY08. But we're still contributing to veterans organizations and senior centers and trying to help and partner with our communities in a constructive way. But there's been some challenge with that. As of right now, our projected deficit for the coming fiscal year is about $2.1 million. But how do we deal with that then? How do we, as a staff, come to the board and say, here's our proposal that we think is a responsible proposal to deal with the challenges that we're facing? We generate, at the available levy, we generate $532,000 of new dollars. Some additional revenue that's generated largely from the projected increases in sales, county sales tax and state shared revenue. And then use of flexibility language that I mentioned that the legislature's allowed us to do from special districts. It's about $1.5 million. So the red box on the left, again, $2.1 million challenge, largely attributable to loss of our payment in lieu of taxes, loss of our inmate contracts, and the continued state impacts. How do we propose to deal with that? The three green boxes, again, available levy, some projected additional revenue, and then use of flexibility language for the coming fiscal year.
I think one of the things that should be mentioned is just part of the budget process and going through each department and them making conscientious decisions about how those dollars should be expended. You did mention that every department was flatline, but we've been meeting with the departments for the past couple days, and we met prior in past budget meetings having that kind of discussion about how did you get to this particular point. And one theme that continually came out was that the departments were making great efforts to provide quality services without going without, I guess, in a sense, and knowing the limitations of the dollars that existed. And I very much appreciate that about the county and our efforts in providing quality services. Ultimately, our job is to ensure that we're providing services to the people who live in Navajo County, and being very good stewards and conscientious about that is very much a part of the conversations that we've been hearing. So we're grateful for that, and I think that's been part of the budget process that we haven't really mentioned.
Correct.
Well said.
Now, we've only got just a few minutes left. Just so we kind of wrap this up and help the average citizen understand, then, because of the loss of the inmate contracts, where we were housing inmates in our jail for the state and for the feds, they've took those contracts from us. And then because of the state continuing to transfer things down to us that we have to pay for, and then the feds not giving us the PILT payment or not authorizing that beyond this year, it leaves us with the hole. And so when you talk about available levy, that basically means that it's going to cost people a little more on their taxes, correct?
It is, Mr. Tenney, under the proposal. Again,
right.
In 2010, property owners paid a total of $12.4 million in county taxes. Under our available levy, what we're proposing now, they'd pay 11.3, which is still $1.1 million less. And again, the average value of home in Navajo County is $100,000. That's the real average value of a home. The combined increase between increases in health and library, 3-cent increase, and then our available levy, that's 11 cents. So 11 cents on a $100,000 house is $11 a year. It's 92 cents a month, or it's 3 cents a day. And that's our proposal to deal with the structural imbalance we have, again, attributable to loss of PILT, loss of inmate contracts, and state impacts.
So what that means for the average taxpayer is if the board adopts the budget that y'all are bringing to us to overcome these challenges we've received, it's going to be, you know, the average person being having a $100,000 home would be about $11 increase on their county tax for the year.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I think that's the main thing people are going to want to say. A lot of times we get used to talking in acronyms and in lingo where we talk about available levy and additional revenues and whatnot. They don't know what it means. Bottom line is they're going to want to know, what does it mean if that has to happen? And I don't know that it has to, but I don't know how we get around it. I can't in good faith say that we ought to budget built into our budget and just count on the federal government's going to give us that money. I've seen too much happen in Washington over the last decade to believe that we can count on that. If it comes in, great, then maybe we can make some adjustments and come back the other way the next year. But if they don't authorize it, only crazy people would put that in the budget and then not have it be there.
Right.
So I recognize we have the issue that we've been given the signal. We've got about 1 minute left.
Okay.
So if you have anything in the last minute you'd like to say, what would it be?
Well, the bottom line, you see before you mentioned the 11 cents. We want to be transparent with the public. We still have the 4th lowest primary property tax rate in Arizona, even at the available levy, without changing any of the other counties yet, using 13 rates. The bottom line is 1.4 million lost in PILT. We are very unsure if the Congress is going to fund it in the next budget year or not. We will continue to watch the legislature for any additional impacts to us, see what kind of relief. The board has been reluctant to use the flexibility language that the legislature has authorized, but currently it's a survival tool for us. So we propose to continue to use it. Again, Navajo County, under the board's direction and working with our elected officials and departments, is a transparent, accountable organization. We treat responsibility of our tax dollar very seriously, and we hope you support the proposed budget.
All right. Well, we are out of time, and I knew that was a lot to go over, but I also knew that it's important that we have you on here to try to let the people know what we're looking at and what some of the challenges are we're facing, and how you guys are proposing to the board that we tackle those challenges. So thank you, Jimmy, for being here, and thank you for what you do on behalf of the citizens of Navajo County. I thoroughly enjoy working with you.
I just want to mention one thing, in a sense that if there's someone out in the public who has concerns and you have questions, we certainly want to entertain those questions and talk about those questions. That's a part of this conversation. So if you would like to contact David or myself or Mr. Jayne or other people from the county, please feel free to do so.
We've all got an open door policy.
Yes, and the communication part is very important to us, and that we really want to make a concerted effort to involve the community in this conversation.
Well said. All right, we're out of time. So
great.
Thank you, Jimmy. Dawnafe, always a pleasure.
Yes, always good to see you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We want to bet, and thanks to Mel West and his crew here at City 4 Television and the folks in the city of Show Low for always letting us use their facilities. And until next time on Navajo County Connection, say good night, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
Thanks for watching.